Welcome to the very first episode of the Rad University podcast. We're kicking things off by pulling back the curtain on the industry secrets, the boots on the ground blunders, and the critical details that never seem to make it into the project manual. Whether you're navigating complex permitting or just trying to keep your splicing on schedule, we're here to talk about what no one tells you about your fiber builds. Grab your headset, let's get into the grit behind the glass.
All right. So my name's Dylan Quayle. I started out in the industry more on the WISP side of things, which stands for Wireless Internet Service Providers, if you guys don't know what that is. Started out in the field, worked my way all the way up to the VP of that company, helped them get started in fiber, and then transitioned out of that company to a larger organization doing fiber builds and managing some projects. And then ended up here at Rad Network Solutions, where I'm at now, working directly with ISPs, contractors, so on and so forth, helping them choose the right solutions and products to fit their needs, and then also giving them some advice to help ease whatever they're working on.
Yeah, Mike Smith. Title, I guess, is a senior application engineer.
It's because he's old.
Yeah, it's an age thing. It has nothing to do with rank. It's purely age. But I've been in the industry longer than I'd probably like to admit. But I think I started in 1993. I think that adds up to about 33 years.
Mike, I won't even tell you when I was born then.
Yeah, I was going to say Dylan isn't old enough.
Yeah, we don't have to. Hence the senior. But I started back in HFC days with Cox Communications, and I spent about 30 years, almost 30 years at a municipal utility that built an HFC plant and replaced that plant with all fiber to the home. Did a lot of most of my work was out in the field, and did about 8 years of design and construction management, and then discovered Rad Network Solutions and decided that I wasn't having nearly as much fun as I could have. So I decided to join Rad and haven't looked back. Glad I did.
All right, I am Tim Smith. I'm with Rad Network Solutions also. I am a application engineer. I've got 26 years of telecommunications experience starting back in 2000. I worked for 19 years as a consulting outside plant engineer and construction inspection person. I then worked for 6 years for TDS Telecom as an outside plant engineer and also an outside plant construction manager. And then I've been with Rad Network Solutions for 1 year now.
I'm Austin Cordova. I've actually, I didn't get started in the telecom industry. I got started in oil and gas. I was an engineer offshore running a wire line, actually, ironically. It was a 7-conductor wire, did a lot of measurements down the hole, but a lot of it was actually kind of applicable. It was all telemetry systems. And then oil field, as you know, is a very cyclical business. So I felt like I was getting bottlenecked into something. So I started branching out, and I saw this, oh, what's this fiber optics about? And it's like, this is kind of neat. I could take some of the things I've learned from here and apply it over there. So I actually first joined Duraline, or pretty large conduit manufacturer. You may have heard of them. Worked for them for about 7, 8 years. And then also worked for another conduit manufacturer after that. And I've just been working, learning the different ways that things have migrated from conventional to microduct and everything in between. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and introduce myself then. I'm Emily Bauer. I also work for Rad Network Solutions as a marketing strategy manager. So I'm the one that is running the podcast. My experience is not in telecommunications, but I have been with Rad for the last 3 years. So I've learned a lot about it and really excited to start this for everybody. So we're going to go into the conversation about what Rad is and what Rad University is. Dylan, do you want to speak to it first?
Yeah, so I think we'll start with what Rad Network Solutions is. At its core, it's a company that supports fiber builds with, everything you need materials and support-wise, whether that's duct, fiber, equipment, engineering. But what makes us a lot different than other distributors out there is we're not product-focused only. A lot of our solution comes from the people at this table, the experience. We're a company filled with very experienced people that don't just push products on you. We actually push solutions to your problems and the correct way to implement and utilize materials in the field. Mike, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I don't think anything you said was untrue. We really focus on the relationship side of this business. It's been said that, we're kind of a company that hasn't found its identity yet. And I think what people mean by that is like, okay, are we a distributor? Are we a manufacturer? Are we OEM? Are we consultants? And the answer to that is yes, every one of those we are. It kind of depends on who the end user is or who our customer is. We do sell through distribution. We have a number of direct accounts. We work with engineering firms. And so, yeah, we are a lot of those things. We do all those things very well. I guess our preference is to build a rapport and a relationship with the end user. I think most of us, our background is hands-on. We have direct experience working with the products and types of solutions that we are out there showing to our customers. So if there's one thing that makes us unique is we actually can go out and halfway do the work. I wouldn't want to have to go out and stand in a splice trailer all day again, or go out digging in vaults or digging up cut fiber and repairing duct. But we used to do things like that. And so it gives us a unique perspective and insight into the challenges that some of our end user customers are facing. It helps us narrow down the right product for the right situation for customers.
I was gonna say that was a really good segue though into why we started Rad University. A lot of our customer base may be new into OSP or into underground builds, and we wanted to give a platform that showed them the ability or gave them more insight than what we can do personally at times, or give them a tool.
I think the industry as a whole, for many years, did not have to focus as much on cost efficiencies as they do now. The competition was not or the landscape was not as competitive as it used to be. So it was just, there was a standard way of building out a fiber network, and that's just what everybody did. And as the industry has become more competitive and you get multiple providers competing for the same customer, uh, they have been forced to find more cost-effective, efficient methods of deploying their networks.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing about Rad University. So, like Emily said, getting into that, we want a tool that anybody can use regardless of size. There's really not a lot of good education out there that's inexpensive, let alone free. And that's one of the big goals with Rad University is we want to bring the education, the answers from experts, interviews from people doing different things that are relevant to our viewers' questions. We want to get the answers to the public for free without having to pay for consultants and do all that extra legwork.
I think the only thing I would add is RAD is fairly new. I believe it was established in 2022. So being only 4 years old, don't let that fool you. It's, as we've all said, we've got a lot of experience. So that's hopefully what's going to set us apart from the other companies in our field that are doing the same thing we're doing.
Rad by name has been around since 2022, but the business has operated quite substantially longer than that under a different name, and it was kind of part rep firm, part construction company, part OEM manufacturer, all these different things, and this segment of the business became much bigger than that simple name that it used to be under. So it kind of separated from those other businesses. It became its own entity in 22, but it's certainly operated for probably 6 to 8 years prior to that as well, under a different name. So
Yep.
very unique set of experiences across all the people here in the company.
Yeah, and that's, just sitting at this table right now, we probably have over half a century's worth of experience in the field combined.
Thanks to Mike and Tim over here.
Shh. which you didn't have to point that out, but uh, the solutions that we bring to the table and like to teach people, it doesn't just look good on paper. It doesn't look good cost wise. It really works. Like Mike said, we do have a construction company still, and we work with hundreds of clients across the country that deploy different styles. So we really have been able to hone in on what is a very efficient, scalable, future-proof way to build an outside plant network. And that's the products that we've put together and that we like to teach people how to use for that reason, just because we know that it works and it's extremely efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the thing that sets us apart the most is that we partner with whoever we are working with to give them the best solution and to teach them the best way forward for whatever their network build is or whatever they may need. But the number one thing that our staff really loves is to teach. And they do a really good job and definitely integrate into whoever we're working with as a partner for sure. But that gets us into our next conversation, which is micro technology versus conventional technology. I know this table has a lot of opinions about it.
Well, no, you mentioned conventional to micro. I don't want to say there's a right one way is better than the other way because they both are very similar. It's just the way the product is made. Micro is getting into smaller compared to your conventional. So one may work better for one person than the other. They're both good solutions. It's just understanding how both solutions work.
Yeah.
But Tim, microfiber's not nearly as strong. It's weak. It breaks. It doesn't work as good. There's a lot of common misconceptions in the industry.
Yes. So if you're putting your fiber in a conduit, do you need that much of a sturdier cable as like your traditional? My opinion, no. I mean, you've got the strength of the duct to protect it.
Yep, that excavator that's going to hit your conduit is going to tear through a 2-inch duct just as easily as it tears through a 1410 or any other size micro duct. It's not going to care.
Does that happen quite a lot?
It definitely
Yeah.
can.
You can definitely get some very experienced professional excavators, a backhoe operator that can feel his way through the dirt. I've seen it many times where they can just tell that they're up against something in it. Who knows if it's a rock, it could be a root, but a good operator has a feel for that backhoe. But how many of those are out there these days?
That's exactly what I was just about to say, Mike. It's hard to find them,
But I think it comes down to more or less, and I try not to play too many favorites. I have the things that I get excited about, and the micro multi-duct solutions I get excited about. But I think it really depends on the set of challenges that the end user is facing. It could be environmental, it could be home density. Obviously, if it's aerial versus underground, or if it's a mix, and every company seems to have their own set of goals and you know things that they're not willing to change, and there are things within that they are willing to look at other possible methods. And so I always say I try to meet the customer where they're at, and find out what their challenges are and just see what kind of problems I can help them solve.
What would you say some common misconceptions about micro technology are?
That you have to be more careful with it. That, yeah.
Harder to work with. I commonly get that misconception that microfiber is harder to get into. It's harder to work with, harder to splice even, which if any of you guys don't know that, now, yes, they do make smaller glass. You can get 200 micron and even smaller than that glass. But most of the microfiber that we talk about or that we recommend, especially to newer users, is just standard 250 micron glass, which for any of you that don't know that, just a little lesson, that is the actual size of the outer diameter of the fiber that's inside of the buffer tubes or ribbon, if it's a ribbon cable. And that 250 micron is kind of the standard size. That's going to be what's going to be in most of your armored cables, the larger cables, and then even into microfiber, unless you're getting into the really tiny microfiber, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, the OD of the glass is really just the OD of the paint, the color that's on it, the identifier. The
Yep.
cladding is still 125, whether that be 180 micron glass, 200 micron, 250 micron. The cladding is all still 125. So when it gets into your splice machine, the splice machine doesn't know any different. If it came out of a cable that was full of 180 micron or 200 or 250, splice is the same. What is different though are the tools required to work with these cables. And I've seen more often than not, a lot of the fears or reservations or hesitation that a company may have working with micro is based upon misconceptions or an experience that they've had where maybe they didn't have all of the right tools. And I think that kind of comes back to what we talked about earlier, is how uh, what we do that is unique is if I know a company has not worked with 200 micron glass before, I'm going to make sure they have the right tools. If they haven't worked with microfiber before, I want to make sure they have the right set of tools to open up that outer jacket the first time. So that kind of is what is unique about Rad, is being able to see a problem and address it before it becomes a problem.
You're not
for
just
the
going to
end user.
set them out into the world and
Yeah, it's not like you come to the counter, you order your stuff, we hand it to you, and you're on your way. It is full guidance and consultation to make sure that the customer is going to be successful. I think it's our responsibility when we find a solution that may be new to the customer. It's our responsibility to make sure they have all the right tools and knowledge and information to be successful using it.
Yep. And I would like to just say one thing too. Don't be scared if you're using traditional fiber and you have the correct tools for that. And when I say traditional, it could be dielectric, it could be a single jacket, armored cable. If you have those tools and you want to experience micro or try it, it's not an expensive set of tools you have to get. It's not like you're spending thousands of dollars on some tools. They're not that expensive. So just keep that in mind as well.
Is there a better application from micro versus conventional? Like, if there's like existing infrastructure or if you know that a build, I guess what is the main reason that a person would choose micro over a conventional sort of cable?
I think a lot of it has to do with density, and it could be density of your duct or density of the homes passed of the network where you're building.
It does. A lot of it comes down to density, cost, and comfort. Some people, and again, it just all comes down to personal preference. Like we said, there's no wrong way to do this. All we can really do is highlight the pros and the cons. So just looking at some of the pros, when you look at a conventional build, for people that have been in the industry a long time, it's a lot more familiar. Some would say it's maybe a little simpler. I don't necessarily think that's the case personally, but that is what some people say. Some of the cons, though, is just sheer size. When you're using large cables, large duct, you have to have large vaults, which then takes up more surface space. You're digging bigger holes, you need bigger equipment, it's heavier. You get into the micro stuff and it's smaller, lighter, which in turn means it's typically more cost effective. It's also a little more flexible. So because of that extra flexibility, you're able to use smaller vaults and splice cases, which then in turn, again, can save you some costs there. I will say, one downside that I have seen on the micro side is when you get into the really small splice cases, sometimes they can be a little bit trickier to work with. Nothing too hard, but obviously when you're in a larger splice case, you got a little more room to route your fiber. So I would say that could be one con on the micro side.
I don't even know if it's a non-positive. And again, just like today, we were going over some splice closures that Austin had not seen before, and some fiber that I'm guessing probably had not worked with before. Mm-hmm. And it's really all about, and again, an end user is going to be using one of our splice closures for the first time. It's my responsibility to make sure he has all the information, how to install it, how to deploy it. And so that starts with us understanding the product thoroughly to begin with, so that we then can avoid that frustration on the end user side.
Yeah, I mean, overall construction, are very similar between both microfiber or micro technology and conventional. The only big difference is, like Dylan mentions, its size. With the conventional, you need bigger valves typically. You might be running an inch and a quarter compared to a 1410 microduct. So, and really the only difference there is maybe the chute size different on your plow or on drilling. You may need to use a bigger reamer pulling back. You can fit 6 1410 ducts in the same space almost as you can an inch and a quarter duct. So construction wise, they both built exactly the same pretty much.
Yeah,
It's just your
it's the
tooling
same
difference.
machinery
Yeah.
to install it. If you're plowing, you're plowing maybe a duct package, 4-way or 7-way, versus an inch and a quarter.
Right.
And it comes down to, like on the cable, it's going to come down to bend rees. Armored cable needs more space to bend. Micro requires less, and due to the outer diameter of
Well, and I think this is a good opportunity to talk about the elephant in the room here. And this is a classic time where that old saying of size matters does not actually matter here.
How much different are the costs comparable from conventional to micro?
I don't think the
Or
major
just where
component
yeah.
of the cost of the fiber is the glass,
Mm.
especially now. So, a 144 count armored cable is not going to be much more, if any, more expensive than a 144 count microfiber. And if you get into the lower diameter fiber or glass, then you're looking at increased costs, regardless if it's armored, dielectric, or micro. Doesn't matter. It's still 200 micron glass. And so that's where your major cost component is in a fiber optic cable. I'm not talking about double jacket, double armor. There's a lot more layers and material involved in that in the manufacturing process. But if you just take a 144 standard microfiber versus a 144 cal single jacket, single armor, roughly the same. Your big savings is going to be in the duct required to put those two cables in.
And the
Well,
bolt sizes.
And the bolt sizes, the splice closures required for it, the grounding, all the other steps. Not to mention, jetting microfiber typically is much more efficient than pulling or jetting traditional armored cable.
So labor really comes into it a bit.
Absolutely. The labor component is one thing that a lot of companies maybe inadvertently overlook in the beginning when they're considering what materials to go with. I mean, on at the bottom line of the whole bill of materials, yes, micro is going to save on the materials, but your big savings is going to be on the labor side to install all those materials. Sometimes it doesn't show up on a bill of materials.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right on there. Your labor to install a larger vault or to a small vault is going to be cost-wise greater, but also timely. It's going to take longer too to set that, place that bigger vault than you would a little vault. So another advantage to the micro. I do recommend, though, I know, like Mike, you mentioned earlier about the big challenge people have is just change. I would very highly suggest if there'd be someone considering trying to do micro that currently building traditional. A small subdivision is a perfect opportunity to get in and try a micro to see if that works for them or not.
Do you guys have any stories that you can tell about customers that went from conventional to micro or micro to conventional or even like a mix of the both?
Typically, I'm trying to think of a single customer that has switched from conventional to micro that has gone back to conventional. Usually it's quite the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they're doing a dense residential build or they're doing a moderately rural build, they almost always stick with the micro once they start doing micro.
Yeah,
I don't think I've seen anybody go back to doing traditional.
I have a company in Ohio actually that started doing some micro in a subdivision, and they typically do rural fiber. So the subdivision was kind of new to them. They liked the idea of the smaller footprint. So did the HOA that they were working with. So it made the permitting process a little bit easier. And they actually found out like their employees enjoyed it so much more that they are now kind of transitioning their rural build over to micro for the cost savings and the ease of use. And then same thing with I have an MDU client that does a lot of the work in the MDU space, and they were using some corrugated conduit instead of a microduct inside of the building, which I guess this is another way to talk. The microduct doesn't just have to be outside plant. We can also do it inside of the buildings. We have plenum riser rated stuff. His guys have been able to install the fiber through the building so much quicker by blowing it in to that smooth walled microduct versus the corrugated stuff that they were trying to pull it through. And he was amazed at the labor savings alone, let alone the materials are being less expensive as well. I mean, his guys were, he basically had said that I came down there for one day to do some training with them, and we did more in that one day than they would get done in a week or two. And in fact, he didn't bring enough fiber to do the whole day because he thought he brought more than we would ever touch in the whole day. And we had it done shortly before or just after lunch.
Yeah, it's not an uncommon experience when using a machine to install fiber. And Dylan, in your case there, it was, the smallest of the air-blown fiber and duct, probably more of an 8.5 application. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yes. Yep. It was the 8.5 with our air-blown micro drop.
Yeah. It's an extremely efficient. However, it does require a little bit, I don't cautiously say skill, but it takes definitely more direction and training up front working with that duct or with that type of solution, particularly at the very onset of making sure the duct is installed correctly.
Yes. And the nice thing about that duct, so obviously you always want to have as least broken of a path between point A and point B as you can. And nice, easy sweeps. You don't want to bend it too hard. And like Mike had said with the splice cases, making sure our customers can be as successful as possible is a big part of what we do differently. And that training is what comes with that product. If this is the first time that, I know somebody's using this stuff, we have those conversations and try to explain that stuff. We don't ever assume that somebody knows you can't bend this stuff, at a 90-degree angle, really sharp on a ledge, and the conduit or in the cable will blow through it nice and easy.
Yeah, I would say that like even Mike has a ton of experience now in just designing networks. And I think that's a huge benefit when you think about it because you have the visual experience to look at what somebody's doing and, pull in what the best solution, most cost-effective solution is as well. And that's huge, especially in this era where costs are fluctuating quite a lot.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely. It's been a huge benefit being able to go back and look at an existing design, what a customer is using, how they're building now, and finding ways of improving, even if it doesn't involve micro. And you could kind of see where our preferences lie. We would probably be remiss if we didn't mention that, even if a company is doing more of a traditional type build with armored cable, and they may be doing armored cable because they've got a lot of aerial plant and they don't want to mix micro with the other aerials. Some companies don't have the yard space to stock, a yard full of armored cable and strand and all the associated items necessary for aerial builds, and then have a totally different deployment type for the underground. So they want to keep it uniform across the whole network. Totally understandable. And even in that case, we have brought in materials and products that still are able to find efficiencies and cost savings, even with a traditional build. Something too important to mention that we don't just focus on the micro. These same concepts and initiatives are applied to a traditional build as well, where even if you're doing armored cable, we still have products that allow to reduce the overall footprint of the individual items involved in building it, the vaults, the duct, or the splice closures especially.
Yeah. Well, and I think my MDU client is the perfect example. They came to us with a design and a bill of materials, and I basically told him I'd be happy to quote it, but would you be interested in some alternative advice? And he was all ears. So I went out on site with them, showcased our products and how I would have personally put it together. He was all for it as long as it came out to be cost effective. And once he's seen the price differences, we quoted it both ways, the way he was originally going to do it and then the way that we recommended and kind of helped teach him how, or not teach him how, but recommended. And then as he decided to go that route, taught him how to do it. But that's the difference with us. We're not just going to go right into a bill of materials unless that's what you want. If you don't want to change, like Mike said, if it comes down to a logistical or a material handling or even just a simplification of not wanting multiple, maybe you have the yard space but don't want to have 3 different types of cable in your yard. That's perfectly fine. Once we establish that, but we are here to kind of help give our knowledge to anybody that would be interested in learning about alternative ways of doing it, because what it comes down to is a lot of people just don't know that there's a different way. This is the way they've done it, the way that they were taught. And it comes down to a common mistake we see, which is people choosing just based on what they've done or know, and not what might be the best or makes the most sense for that project.
Another thing I really like too about the microduct, I know one of you guys mentioned about needing less real estate, meaning your vault sizes, pedestal size is going to be smaller. As a provider, when you're building through a municipality or something, you might not think that plays a big role, but it does play a big role. If you take in consideration the permitting authority, say the municipality or the property owners, you have not as much trouble with either one of them when you're setting up smaller vaults and pedestals. You got to take consideration if you're putting big vaults and you're making property owners upset about that big vault. A smaller vault might save you some of that problem, and overall, you want that property owner as a customer. So it's the big advantage to not upsetting, in a way, the people that matter. It's your municipalities and your property owners. So,
Yeah. That also brings up that conversation about HOAs as well, needing to have things standardized and not see. I mean, as an important. Oh, did were you gonna bring that up?
Oh no, I think it's a great
Yeah.
segue into our next
Yeah, go ahead.
area of discussion.
Mhm.
Some job site stories. But yeah, to your point right there, I had a customer currently that we're working with extensively that had an HOA, several of them. They were going to build into 30 different neighborhoods, basically, pretty substantial. And their typical deployment style was more traditional, using pedestals. They're an old Foden company that's doing fiber. And we see this all the time. Same thing with HFC companies or old cable TV companies that they've been using pedestals for 40 years. They are hell bent on holding on to that pedestal application. So you've seen them all kind of transition the fiber right into that same pedestal. So the HOAs with this company said, no way are we going to have another pedestal in our front yards. And they were placing a pedestal every other yard. And so the engineer contacted us. They knew about some of our products and solutions, and sure enough, went down there, showed it out to them. They went with it. However, the key was, though, I knew they were going to have about 17 contractors working in various neighborhoods all the time. So I knew that there was no way, unless I got those contractors on board and headed off any kind of concerns or issues before they came up, I knew that was bound to fail, and they would complain. They would convince the ISP to go back to the old way of doing things. And so I basically went down there. We had it all scheduled. I had, I think it was 13 contractors there for how to the best practices for deploying the duct, how to put couplers on microduct, very simply, how to sweep duct into the vault, best practices on placing the vault, how to install the fiber into the duct, and then not to mention how to work with the fiber and how to install it into the new closures that they were going to be using. So all of those were absolutely critical into ensuring that the whole project was going to be successful, that every key player in the whole process of building it had to be on board. And that continues. I just had a call before we walked into the podcast here is from one of the contractors on that project asking me about some questions, clarifying some things. So those are key parts to making sure a project is successful.
Yeah, well, and that's a great segue into a story that I have. Just a few weeks ago, I was out doing a demonstration of our Opera fiber blowing machine into some micro duct. And when you're working with contractors, making sure that they're educated and know what's going on is just one part. You also have to ensure you're doing some good quality control and keeping an eye out on what's going on. We got in the morning, got all set up. I did a training on just kind of the basics of the machine in their yard while their engineer was trying to kind of pick a route for us to work. Well, I had their guys out in the field playing with the machine, told them to, try to break it, go ahead and figure out what you might do wrong. I'm going to go inside, talk to your engineer, see what's going on. So I go in and, we pick a location where we want to blow. We decide where we want to set up at, get it all going. And as we're packing up to head over there, one of their guys goes, well, hey, we're gonna have to be careful because I think, and it was a competitor. They're like, we think that they have some fiber on the ground over there, and it's been there for like 6 months. It was right by a coffee shop that he would go to every morning, and he just noticed this big bundle of fiber figure-eighted on the ground. Well, we get there and go to set up, and we open the vault and come to find out that giant bundle of cable was running into their duct. A contractor that they hired had tried to shoot the cable through that duct. It got stuck on a piece of damage where the conduit had been kinked over due to a bad backfill at an intersection. And that contractor never told him anything about it, just left him there, said it wasn't my headache, and walked away from it. And it definitely brings into some funny situations where you got to keep an eye out on what's going on. All right. So with that, it's time to answer the main question that everyone's probably been trying to listen to, which is, what does nobody tell you about fiber builds? The thing that I would like to say, and what we want to start out, and again, this is going to be this whole series that we're starting, is entering into fiber. If you've never done it before, if you're a wireless internet service provider, if you're doing copper, whatever it might be, it's not as scary as everybody makes it sound. It's very straightforward when you have the right people to help you be successful doing it. Mike, I don't know if you or Tim or if anybody has anything else they want to add, but that's kind of what I wanted this to be. Is it's not nearly as hard as everyone likes to make it sound.
Well, there are certainly, I think when it comes to companies that are transitioning from the more traditional styles of building to some of this new, I don't even, I hesitate to call it technology, but just new products to do the same thing. They have to have all the skills, the tools, and the information up front in order to create buy-in. So we've got to thoroughly, before the duct and the fiber and the vaults go in the ground, getting the team on board, getting all the key players at a company on board up front, making sure we've answered all the questions, addressed all the potential issues prior to everything taking place is a key to making sure it's going to be successful in the end.
Yeah, I mean, for an overbuild, the engineering, having the right engineer, having it designed correctly, that is just a huge component. And having the right products you're going to implement into that design. I mean, that's two of your biggest and most important things I feel in a fiber build.
I think the key takeaways for today then are very simple. You need to plan your build better than you think you need to, and try to pick the best materials that could be best for the actual project. The right materials and tools matter more than just the price itself, because again, you may not see a huge difference on the bill of materials, but the ease of use, the scalability, and the labor savings can be huge hidden bonuses, but depending on which route you go. And try to learn from some of the mistakes that we highlighted today, so you don't make those mistakes yourself.
Well, thank you everybody for listening. Please follow and subscribe. It's Rad University. Like and comment if you have any ideas for upcoming podcasts. Our next one is going to be on June 8th. and it'll be in regards to current market conditions. Hope you guys have a great day.